Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Joel Elston here. Today is Thursday, February the 14th, 2019. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. It's 8 o'clock in New York, 5 o'clock Los Angeles, 1 p.m. in London, and Sydney, Australia is at 12 midnight. Wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And Joel, we get to do our weekly thing that we've been doing for a few years now, but now we get to do it on Valentine's Day, which is a good day for some people, and it's a rough day for other people. Just, I guess, once again, like with everything else, it depends on your perspective, right?
Yeah, it one of the things I deal with when I'm working with clients, and days like this can have such an effect because they have no more meaning or less meaning than any other day.
Right.
It's just the emphasis we place on them. And if it's Valentine's Day and you're without a relationship or one struggling, it has emphasis on the negative, and that's where it just becomes so, like the holidays, that's when people have a lot of mental health issues because the picture of what's supposed to happen in life doesn't match your reality. And that's where we start feeling really off. So Valentine's Day, for many, many people, it can exaggerate or exacerbate the condition of loneliness or the perspective of loneliness. Mm-hmm. And as we know with the law of attraction, then that invites more loneliness, and it just becomes this never-ending cycle.
Yeah, that's true. And so we'll talk a little bit about how to break that cycle today. Also, you had posted something that I made reference to before we started, a really interesting article you'd found that you shared on Facebook about comparing different processes, different ways of dealing with mental health issues, particularly within the community that you're in, the coaching and therapeutic communities. And I just found it fascinating. They did this compare and contrast between 12-step and other more modern mindfulness-based things. And I was just wondering what your take was on it, because you posted it and it was cool, but what did you think about it?
Well, one of the things that operates, and it applies to what we do and what you and I do and what a lot of people do of just life in general, is we have a tendency to think this worked for me, so it has to work for you.
Right.
Or my religion is this, so your religion must be this, or you're wrong. And that to me is where, whether it's mental health or whether it's life or religion or just within the work setting. When I'm a manager of when I'm a director of a treatment facility, as I've been several times, I have a sort of a supervisory mentality of, I'm going to give you where I want to be, and I will let your own individual skill set get us there. I'm not going to micromanage how you get there. I just believe in, here's what I want done, get it done in the way that works with your skill set. And it's sort of that way. You figure out what works for you. Well, that the article we were talking about is you have the idea that when addiction first was sort of identified way back in the 1920s and 1930s, where alcoholism was just really out of control.
Oh, yeah.
And there was nothing really available to treat it. The doctors didn't understand it. Everybody thought it was just a low character, someone who just, the dregs of society get addicted. Well, that was clearly not the case. And so they implemented the best they had at the time, which was you get a group of people together and you talk about how powerless you are and how you have to turn your will and your life over to a higher power, and none of this is in your control, but you realize that. So it's almost like a way of, you can't blame me for this because it's an addiction, so I'm going to blame it on a disease idea, but yet only a power greater than me could fix this. And I'm not criticizing any belief system, but that's just where it came. And over the years, millions of people have found recovery through the 12-step process. So I'm grateful that it's there. However, less than 20% of the people that go into these meetings the first year, and it's much less, I'm using the most extreme positive number, but less than 20% of the people that go into a room, a 12-step room, make it 1 year without drinking or drugging or gambling or whatever your issue is. So that's an 80% fail rate at best.
Yeah.
And so that clearly isn't working. So the idea that as progression has come up in the understanding of psychology and mindfulness and where the general idea of how to apply things work, there's a spectrum of things out there. There's the 12-step program. Again, let's say 20% that works for other people. Then the mindfulness concepts or the holistic principles or there's stuff like the stages of change. These things all work to a certain degree based on your personality beliefs and personalities and your personal beliefs. It's impossible to take an atheist and tell him you go to a 12-step program and you have to believe in God. And they'll tell you, oh, it's not God, it's a higher power. And then you get into a debate about stuff that doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you that's where your distraction takes place. So how that works with the law of attraction is I see in our life on a daily basis when I'm working with people and even in my own life, how we can get so distracted with the minutia and not understanding how the minutia is keeping us. That's the resistance within the law of attraction. If you're after something, but you're distracted with everything that's wrong in your life and everything that's going wrong, and I really want this area, you're overwhelmed with the emotion of what's distracting you. And so this article did a really good job of without bias, of just saying, here's the advantages of 12 steps. You were able to get the help here, and here's the disadvantages of 12 steps that many people report. And so I like the idea I use the term bio-individuality, as we're all different, and there's not a single method that works for all people. And that's exciting to me versus that being scary.
Absolutely. I agree with you. In fact, I'm curious, how much does it improve that success rate or failure rate, depending on how you want to look at it? Because, I mean, I'm reminded of something that I saw in a television program many years ago. I think it was The West Wing. One of the characters was an alcoholic, and he was talking about how when you first admit you're an alcoholic, everybody's there to support you. Everything is good, and you actually succeed perhaps in getting on the wagon and staying off of alcohol for a year or 2 years, whatever. But when you fall off and you relapse, if you will, all of a sudden nobody wants to know you. And I'm curious, is that really true?
So much of it is perception. It's whether it's true or not is, again, based on how you're viewing things. If you're looking at it, a lot of times it's a perspective, it's a negative mentality or a negative approach to it. That's where the concept of, okay, I'm working really hard, and that's a lot of times within the 12-step program, that happens where you're placing your faith in a power greater than yourself, and you go to meetings, and you have these steps of recovery that you're working on, and there's nothing wrong with the steps.
Right.
But if something happens and you relapse, then you've obviously done something horribly wrong. You're a bad person. You weren't being truthful with yourself. You didn't, versus sort of another concept, say, okay, I slipped up here. I'm another way. I haven't lost my recovery. I've just had this little dip in the road. So much of how you look at it, it again is determined solely by your perspective, and the rooms tend to, and this is not the case for all rooms. The rooms tend to support that negative spin of, oh, you weren't doing it correctly. Oh, you got to be better. Versus, I screwed up. I've never have accomplished anything of any significance in my life without screwing up royally in the process.
Right.
I view the screw up as part of my learning curve. I learned by really, I knock out the first 1,000 ways to do something wrong before I get it right. That's just how I do it. I'm good with that.
I hear you.
And so once you sort of adjust it, I look at it. I always encourage people when they're in recovery, if we have a slip, if we move on, let's adjust it in the big scheme of things. You're alive. You have another shot. Let's get going. So it is, like you said, that becomes so much within the 12-step program or addiction recovery or mental health. Not shockingly, but I am very much a believer in how you choose to perceive where you're going has the ultimate impact on the outcome, whether you're going in for surgery, where you're going in for, it so much is your perspective, and it's so much more than the average person realizes, or even the medical community recognizes. It isn't this nebulous waste of time, energy, of positive thought. And on the same token, I get in debates with people on the other side of the equation too. If you have an appendicitis, do not sit there and positively think it away. Go have that stupid thing removed, get it fixed up, and then use your positive thought to heal. Don't be ridiculous. Your appendix is about to burst. You're not going to positively think your way out of that. When the time it gets to that point, let's be real. And so there is a balance to all that. I don't like that concept of, I've known people that have said, well, I'm going to take some herbs and I'm going to meditate and my appendix won't burst as their appendix bursts. It's just not rational.
Yeah, I understand. And that makes total sense too. The other aspect is you talked about, I think you said it was optimistically 20% success rate with the 12-step approach. I'm wondering, are there any numbers, is there any data about the opposite approach that was described, which I'm calling the mindfulness approach? And is there any data on what happens when you select the elements that's best for a person individually? Because, I mean, that intuitively that feels right. I'm just curious, is there data to support that?
Well, and the data is developing. And one of the flaws in collecting data for addiction recovery is you're relying on the truthfulness of the people involved in reporting.
Yeah, right.
And I don't mean that to be negative. It's just, addiction by definition has denial and
right.
People telling lies is just part of the addictive process. So most of the steps are, here's an example. Say you go to a treatment center. We'll call it, treatment center A. And treatment center A is a good facility. They do a 12-step model. They do everything. Well, they usually will have a 1-month follow-up after the person discharges, a 6-month follow-up, and a 1-year follow-up. And so you imagine Walt just left the treatment center. He really had a good experience. He's feeling better. He goes home in 1 month. They call and they say, "How you doing, Walt?" "I'm doing great, Joel. Thanks for checking in. I really, I'm getting to my meetings and I'm staying clean." Well, the 6 months, let's say he's had a relapse or had a little problem, and things aren't going as well, not getting to the meeting. Well, they call, and if you choose to answer, you're not going to go, "Yeah, I've messed up a little bit, but I'm back on the horse." Generally,
right.
You're going to be like, "Oh yeah, things are still good. Thank you. You can get off the phone as quick as you can." And then at the year mark, if you even bother caring to answer at that point, which
right.
most people are so away from treatment, they don't care. And then they're going to report more than likely, "Yeah, I'm doing fine. Thanks for calling. Don't call anymore," something like that. So you don't have a real accurate statistic in reporting.
Right.
But when you look at it just from when people get to that extreme bottom and they are required to get back to treatment, one of the things that I have in trying to get access to really help with this, and it's guarded, but I just want statistics and not names, but insurance companies, I like to see when the insurance companies pay for somebody to go to treatment and then how quickly they leave a treatment center and they go to another one. And that not what the client's saying, but what the insurance companies are seeing. I want that statistics to that. And of course the treatment centers themselves don't want you to see that because it would support the idea that you might go to 3 treatment centers or 4 treatment centers in a year.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I know from a personal experience, the people that what I do is I get somebody in, and one of the first, when I'm dealing with addiction particularly, one of the first things I'm trying to figure out, I don't have a specific path that I put somebody on. My goal is to identify what works for that individual. Let's spend a lot of time getting to know the individual, what works for them, and then helping them compose a treatment plan that works based on all the factors that are involved. You and I were having a discussion right before we went on air, the 48 seconds we had before we went on air. The idea that we're really processing and thinking, well, wouldn't there be great if there was something that we had access to that could give us a personality blueprint of what works. And there's,
Right.
there's several psychological personality tests going, but one that's not a medical model is called the Enneagram process. It is a process which uses 9 basic personality tests, and it's spelled it's Enneagram, Enneagram.
Okay.
And there's free tests online, and you can look it up. And you see your personality types. They've named them. I strongly suggest you not read the names because, even though it's impossible not to, because there's a bias in the names themselves.
Oh, really?
I want to be like one is called the reformer, the other is the helper, achiever, the individualist, the investigator, the loyalist, the enthusiast, or the challenger, or the peacemaker. So you see one of those names and go, I want to be the loyalist. So,
right, yeah.
So just there's 9 personality types, and just start that way by going through them. Well, my ultimate goal is to incorporate this type theory, maybe not this specific one, but this type theory of the Enneagrams or maybe the Myers-Briggs or a combination of both, to say, okay, for this personality type in general, we found people that use a mindfulness, holistic approach with meditation as a really effective method. We'll work on nutrition. We'll have you meditate. We'll teach you how to meditate. That's very effective. This other personality type does very well with the structure of 12 steps. We'll get you some 12-step meetings, or you might have one of the, a very varied personality type that we're going to put together a cumulative sort of a shotgun approach of all these different methods. So I think that's an exciting concept of instead of trying to say, here's my program, I'm going to force it on you and make you get it this way. And I do that with individuals. When I sit down with the people I'm dealing with, I figure out what is their currency, what drives them, and how am I going to build a program or help them build their own program that gets them into a form of recovery. And this is a long answer to your question.
Yeah.
But the people that I can get engaged in this process always are successful. Now, I don't mean there's 100% going 1 year without ever use. But say, for example, you have a drink, you're doing well, you have a drink, you have a drug, then you quickly realize you get back on track and the progression is forward. That's a very successful program, I believe.
That's an interesting point because a lot of this depends on how you define success. And very often, the therapeutic community often defines success the way that first piece of data was defined, staying off of whatever it is for a year, which is certainly successful when you do that. But is it the only level of success? I mean, there can be multiple levels. And like you said, we can make lots of mistakes on our way to success, and it's still successful. So at what point do we decide that it's success?
I have, this is a sort of a cumulative description, but I have one young man in particular. He had been in, probably 10 different treatment facilities in the last 5 years. And he ends up coming to me because he just couldn't get it. And doctor, my referral base, I'm sort of the person of last resort. Okay.
Right.
Go see Joel and see if you can figure something out.
Yeah.
And so we were sitting around and we were talking, and this guy has a very, he has a very unique personality. He's very much an antagonist. He likes to argue with different things. Not in a negative way. He's just very inquisitive. He's almost like has a natural debate to everything. And so what I put in place was I said, well, what do you think would work? And here's 20 options of variety of things that'll work. And so he actually, because he's an investigator, he went in there and he started studying these techniques. And he said, well, I sort of like this. So I literally had him doing the work for me. He started writing out his own treatment program. He said, this is the stuff that I think works. Here's the stuff that's crap. And he set it up. He wrote it out. And then, the most effective program we're going to follow is the one that we create.
True.
And so he literally had this individual program, sort of chose a menu of things that matched. And he is, he went 6 months. One night he was out with some friends. He had a couple of beers. He actually called me and he said, this isn't working. I don't even like this. And he said, in the middle of the evening, I'm going home. Well, he had 2 drinks. Many people in the program would say, well, he had a relapse. Well, call it what you would like. But he immediately got right back on the wagon. He didn't view it as a mate. In fact, he said, it just proved to me I don't want to drink. And that's been 2 years ago, and he hasn't touched it.
Wow.
So is that success or is that failure?
Oh, it's definitely success as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. So a perspective of success. Whereas a lot of times the 12-step programs are telling you, okay, you messed up. You got to start your time over. We're keeping score. Your clean date is here. Stand up, say you're an alcoholic, and say your clean date, and you're being punished because, again, not literally, but it's a perception of, boy, I screwed it up. I don't want to have to go face these guys again. Versus, I had a slip last night. Actually, I want to make it a therapeutic slip. I'm going to use it as a learning tool, and I'm going to move on. I haven't lost anything.
Yeah.
It just depends on how you look at it.
It really illustrates just how tough we are on ourselves. I mean, we're brutally tough on ourselves, and we're really brutally tough on each other. And we expect that if we're brutally tough on ourselves and on each other, that it's going to somehow make ourselves better. I've never quite followed that logic. But it ties in nicely with the fact that we have our first question from the live stream listeners. Shireen asked it, and I wanted to share it with you and get your take on it. She says, how can I love myself? And yes, I know the mirror exercise, but when I look into the mirror, I see someone I do not know anymore. So how can I love myself and forgive myself?
Well, that's a really, for everybody, I think that's a really difficult question. I think a lot of it begins having the ability to understand what does that even mean? What does that mean to you? Mm-hmm. The idea that how can I love myself and forgive myself? First of all, what do you need to be forgiven for? First of all, we have to be established as there. What do you need to forgive yourself for? It's a really hard understanding because we're told self-forgiveness will make you happy. Well, number one, what are we forgiving ourselves for? I think that's where it comes from, identifying what you think you need to be forgiven for, and then we're perfectly flawed individuals, and when I say that, we are individually, we're bio individuals. We all have a different makeup, and so if we're measuring ourselves, our level of success is being measured by a standard in society, and we're never going to live up to that. We're always going to need to forgive ourselves for not living up to that standard. Or are we living to the standard of the individual that we are? And are we doing this? And where's that coming from? So it's a very difficult question because I don't think you can love yourself until you accept yourself. Mm. And when you accept yourself as a perfectly fine,
oops, I think we lost you for a second there. What happened? Oh, there you are.
What's that?
We lost your voice there for about 5 seconds.
Okay. So, sort of me backing up just a little bit of that perspective of how we're choosing to view what needs to be forgiven. Mm-hmm. Are you not, is it a nebulous, I need to be forgiven? What are the things that I've done? Or am I living to standards that are laid out to me by somebody else that you'll never get that right when I should feel this way because somebody else said that.
Right.
Self-love is truly understanding that we are perfectly fine as we are. Doesn't mean we all need to make adjustments in our life, but it's not living to some preset standard, and sort of loving us unconditionally. Love yourself unconditionally as you would love your own child. Mm-hmm. Love yourself unconditionally. That's a great point. Start. I know that's not a really good answer for that.
No, I'd say it's a good answer. I mean, seriously, I think it's a very good answer. I'll tell you why I think it's a good answer. It's because it's accepting. It's an accepting answer, and acceptance is like at the core of this whole thing about being so tough on ourselves. So I think you're right on, actually.
Right, and I have a really good example of sort of an acceptance of where we're at. I have a client. She's a great client. Really, really like her. She's a young person, and she has multiple things going on, and we have her family and her have had a lot of issues, and what we're trying to do is get her focused on she needs to get on with life. And right now there's a step-by-step process. You need to enroll in school, get a job, and it's literally a step-by-step of what her answer is.
Right.
But she keeps bringing up stuff that doesn't matter, ancient stuff, and distracting from the goal. And it's a rehearsed pattern that she did. And she said, well, I've had such a bad past. In reality, it's not such a bad past. At some point, you got to put a period behind it and say, today is what matters. I got to quit living in what should have, could have, and would have happened. And today is where I live. Love myself in today and move forward. We break it down to that simple step. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Mm-hmm. How do we fix these things? One step at a time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so when we're trying to do that, trying to kind of make that break with that past pattern of being rough on ourselves in various ways, really it's just a mindfulness step, right? It's just saying, I'm just going to stop beating myself up about that stuff, all these things that are going wrong in my life. I'm just going to, I have decided I am not going to be tough on myself for the fact that all these terrible things have been going on. In fact, I'm not even going to be thinking about the terrible things anymore. I give up on them because, they're in the past anyway, so I can't really do anything about the fact that they're there. I can reframe them. I can, I can change the way I think about them if I want to, if I'm willing to put in the work on that. But ultimately, they're still just there. So maybe just let them go. Let them go. Leave them alone.
Well, the power in everything that we're talking about, whether it's self-forgiveness or self-love or whatever term you want to use, but the power of law of attraction, when you combine the knowledge of what we're trying to do with the law of attraction with the understanding that all your power, everything that everything you have, every piece of energy you have is right now at this moment. Mm-hmm. There's nothing else that matters. It has happened. Yesterday was a wonderful day for some people, and it was a horrible day for some people. Mm. And it was the same day. It's just how they perceive what happened. And today, your power exists without knowledge of what happened yesterday, or regardless of what's going to happen tomorrow, your power still exists in today. If I could if I wanted to get rich and really get mega rich, I would be able to create a pill that would allow you to forget every negative thing that has ever happened to you and only remember the good things. That's what people are trying to do with drugs, by the way.
Exactly.
It doesn't work.
Exactly.
But if you were able to erase all that self-doubt, one of my favorite stories, and a friend of mine was telling me this about her son, and he's a great 9-year-old, from a 9-year-old's perspective, and she is a nurse, an RN, and she wants to be a nurse practitioner, but she's a single mom and it's a lot of work. So she was on the phone one day, and she was telling her son about a homework assignment. And he said, well, Mom, what do you want to do? Is this your career? Or do you got more to do? Anyway, this homework assignment he was trying to do, asking Mom questions. Mm-hmm. And Mom says, well, I would really like to become a nurse practitioner. And he said, well, okay, well, why don't you do that? And she said, well, I'd have to go back to school, and then I'd have to complete this exam, and I have to do an internship. And so he's like, and she said she was done, and he goes, so that's like 3 things? And she's like, well, yeah. He goes, huh? So really 3 things is only keeping you from doing that? And she was like, well, yeah, you're right. She actually enrolled in school. She's like, yeah, I need to do that. And it's only 3 things. The only thing that was keeping her is 3 things. Now, I admit these 3 things have some space in between of the stuff is a bigger category.
Right.
But when you break it down to that, yes, you're no closer if you don't begin. So your power in self-forgiveness and self-love is breaking it down to stop with what has happened. You're beating yourself up, and you're viewing what happened through a lens of the rearview mirror that doesn't matter. Right now is all your power exists. Forgiving yourself, it doesn't really even need to happen when you can live in the moment of right now. The law of attraction doesn't require you to forgive yourself. It does require you to stop the emotion that's attached to not being able to forgive yourself. But when you learn to not allow that to be a factor, the law of attraction is so basic and so simple, it can only respond to the emotion you're putting out there. That's all it can do. And so when you learn to not allow that what has happened to in the past to do that, then it can only respond to your energy vibration at that moment. Some people need to do self-forgiveness, and other people realize, I don't give it any power. I adjust my thinking, which adjusts my subconscious, and that's where I need to go. But a lot of times we get stuck on that train of I got to work on self-forgiveness for hours and hours and years and years and years versus, or I can not give it any power. And it's almost like you snap your fingers when you realize that.
That's true. Yeah. And by the way, Shireen, you mentioned when you look in the mirror, you see someone you don't know anymore. That is a great way of describing what happens in the first few days of doing mirror exercises. I described it in the past in terms of I just can't look I couldn't look myself in the eye. I mean, the first day I did a mirror exercise, it lasted about 5 seconds because I just couldn't do it. It was just too uncomfortable. But what I can tell you is when you stick to it over a period of days, and it doesn't actually take a lot of time for this particular thing to happen. If you stick to it for 5 days, maybe 10 at the most, doing it every single day, you find that particular aspect starts to recede. It becomes less and less impactful. And you find that's where the acceptance of yourself starts coming in, just because you went through the same exercise 10 days in a row. So you kind of white knuckle it out for the first few days. Okay, you're going to be looking in the mirror and you just don't know that person anymore and it's not comfortable. But when you just stick it out and just do it for a few days, even if you're only doing it for a minute or half a minute or a quarter of a minute, each one of those days, after that 5 to 10 day period, you start feeling better about that person you're seeing in the mirror. And that kind of fuels you to keep going after that, to get the bigger benefits that come down the road. So I thought I'd point out to you that actually changes pretty quickly.
Well, and also there's another perspective of that, which you sort of made me think about this. If our goal is to change and our goal is to get our life into a more positive perspective, and you're looking in the mirror and you don't recognize yourself, maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe that's if you reframe it like, I'm a new person. I don't recognize. I'm excited about being a new person. Yeah. My goal is to be a new person. My goal is to attract new things. Thank God I'm not seeing what I was seeing before.
Yeah.
Again, a perspective of, there's nothing that we're talking about that at the end of the day that doesn't boil down to your perspective over what you're seeing, feeling, or thinking. That's it. And so when I look in a mirror your resistance is, I don't recognize a person I'll use the emphasis in the discussion. I don't recognize the person I'm seeing in the mirror, or, I don't recognize the person I'm seeing in the mirror. Thank God. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's how you're looking at it. And that's really important to understand.
There is an interesting thing that came to mind as you're describing that, because I realized when I first started doing my mirror exercises, I would see, the circles around the eyes and the wrinkles and so forth, and think to myself, I was never like that before. So for me, that was, I don't recognize the person that I'm seeing in the mirror. Interestingly enough, over time, I've gone through a couple cycles. The first time I did it for about 50 days in a row, which was really, really good for me. I got a lot of benefit out of it. And then for some reason, I just kind of stopped. I kind of wish I hadn't stopped, but I did. I stopped for a number of months. And then I started again a couple months ago, and I've been doing it ever since. And I've been noticing, and this may be just subjective. Maybe this is me wanting to see it. I don't know. But I swear to God, Joel, I think those wrinkles are less. I think they've started to smooth out. And I suspect that it really is true, and I suspect that it's happening because I'm feeling better about myself through doing these exercises.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Well, and also that as you're looking, as you accept it, then you can see it differently. One of the things that happened, I've been in Virginia for 10 years now. And one of the things that always, I think this is how they do it. I'm not exactly sure. I think, they give you, when you first get to the state, I moved from South Carolina, they gave me a driver's license that was good for 4 years. Mm-hmm. Then they renewed it for 6 years. Uh-huh. So my driver's license came up for renewal. Mm-hmm. Well, in the last 10 years, I've had a lot of stuff happen. I've lost my son. I was 40, 46, I think, then I'm all of a sudden 56. In this process. Mm-hmm. So 10 years has passed. And when I got here, there were times I would still be asked for ID when I'd, go see, just be somewhere at a restaurant with people. Going into a restaurant required ID or a club. Mm-hmm. and even though I don't drink, they still ask for ID. And I mean, I was a young looking 46. Well, I have physically aged a lot over the last 10 years. When I look in the mirror, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I don't recognize myself, or that took place. And so again, my perspective of that could be a really positive or a really negative, depending on what you're looking at. Of course, you know which way I choose to look at that.
Absolutely.
And I look at it like, I've earned this. I have survived the unimaginable. I've survived the unsurvivable. Yes, there's some physical outward signs, but internally, I feel better than I felt when I was 30 years of age. I have unlimited energy. I feel just fantastic. So with knowing that, and knowing that all of this stuff that's taking place, I feel better. And so when I look at it, I see the wrinkles and the gray hair and the stuff that didn't exist, 10 years ago, instead of wallowing in it, just saying sort of a badge of honor. To me, I see nothing wrong with that. It's not a negative. The lady at the driver's license, she caught herself. It's hilarious. And my other driver's license picture, I did look again. It was one of the few great pictures I've ever taken anywhere, much less a driver's license. And so she almost apologized as she said it. She goes, "Oh my God, what happened to you?" and she said, "No, I'm sorry." It came out like, "No." I said, "Life happened, and I'm really proud of it. I'm still here." And she said, "Oh wow, that's a great attitude." And she said, "No, she says you actually look exceptionally young for your age in the last picture. You still look your age, or even a little young." She's trying desperately to make up the statement, but I never viewed it as wrong. I've always embraced it. I don't care about that stuff. I don't put any value in that stuff. And then, like you're saying, as you've accepted it, then you notice it differently.
Yes.
And I do believe the wrinkles can go away. I don't care about them. There's something to me. Again, I wear them as it's a medal of I've earned the wrinkles. I've earned the gray hair, and I'm still here, and I'm still resilient. I'm still strong. I'm still productive. I have all this stuff going. I've earned all that. Again, that's the perspective I have on it. I don't view somewhere in society somebody has defined aging as a bad thing. I view it as this incredible thing. If I knew being older felt this great, I'd have been older a long time ago.
That's a great attitude. I like that. It's funny, too, the way you phrased it.
Yeah.
Shelley Epperly, who does the Monday evening program with me, has logged on. Good morning, Shelley. Hope you're doing well. And she made a comment I wanted to share that I think ties in directly to what you've been saying. She says, mistakes are meant to be learned from. When you give them purpose, sometimes it's easier to let them go.
Well, and I really appreciate that, and that helps focus me where I was originally going. When you look in the mirror and you're sometimes you're seeking forgiveness of something that doesn't need to be forgiven. I have made some unbelievably poor choices in my life. I mean, I can set the bar for poor choices if you want to go backwards in time. However, those same poor choices I wouldn't be the person today without those poor choices. Now, don't want to go do them again.
No.
But the fact that I made that, so I can't apologize or forgive myself for something that gave me the greatest gift I have today. That's the life I have today. Now, anybody that I had harmed, of course, I've made amends to and I've apologized to and all that stuff. I'm not talking about that. But as me for self-forgiveness, I have reframed those events as, stuff that really were necessary learning events. I share about my, one of the start of my book, The Bench. I talk about, the beginning of the book is me eating out of a trash can after being homeless in Las Vegas. It's a very intense opening chapter, and I always viewed that as a trauma. And I don't know if I would ever be able to get over that trauma of having to eat out of a trash can and all my behavior leading to me being homeless and all the stuff that took place. And then later in life, chains of events happened, which I reframed how I looked out of eating out of the trash can. And it made me look differently at it. Now, again, I'm never going to view eating out of a trash can, oh, boy, thank God I got to eat some crusty hamburgers out of the trash can.
Right.
But it did put a perspective on me that, like, wow, I wouldn't be the man I am today without that event. I've overcome because of that. So I don't owe myself forgiveness. I owe myself congratulations for overcoming that. It was a growth event, not a traumatic event. At one point, it was a traumatic event. I was in charge of that reframe.
Exactly. Yeah, and you probably did early on when it was still a traumatic event. That's probably when you were doing some sort of a forgiveness thing. But you grew past that.
Yes.
You got to the point where you no
Right.
longer needed to be in that space, and now you could turn it into something more positive. And that's huge.
Exactly.
That's really huge. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not just letting go of something. That's letting go of the negative side of something and then turning it into a positive. That's big.
Yes. Well, and that's sort of the definition. I think that's where, Shelley's very wise comment there is that same thing. The idea that life happens and we're not we didn't get an instruction manual. Truly, I mean, I can tell you, I clearly had no instruction manual. I mean, trust me, it was, wow, let me go try everything the exact opposite of logical and let's see what happens. And however, all that calamity and all that stuff and all the stuff that happened, it was horrible. But I'm looking back, and again, I can approach it with a little humor now, and I can approach it with, yes, my poor choices, despite my every single effort, what seemingly to the contrary, I've become wildly successful, despite all the efforts seemingly of let's be unsuccessful, let's do everything wrong, because I was able to adjust my sail and learn from them.
Yeah.
So I'm very careful when I use the term self-forgiveness. I don't want us to beat ourselves up, but I view self-forgiveness in a little different way than the average person. Now, I'm not talking about what we harm other people. We need to make amends and apologize and all the stuff that we need to do in those areas. However, when it comes to the self-forgiveness piece, I'm about how did that really affect me, and do I really need to forgive myself? I need to forgive myself for thinking I need to forgive myself and just realize that was a growth event. Don't wallow in that's that self-pity party. I can't get past this until I forgive myself. Or, I see where that actually propelled me. I learned from it. Why do I need to be forgiven for going to school, so to speak? That was just a lesson.
Perspective really is everything, isn't it? Because what you're really doing is you're finding an alternative way, and in many ways a stronger way, to let go of the angst, to let go of the pain, to let go of the suffering, to let go of all the horribleness of it. That's what you're really doing. You're letting go of it. And in that letting go, you're finding strength in that letting go.
That's that growth mindset that if you wake up every day with the concept of there's multiple levels in between, but for the most basic exception here, description here is you wake up and you have a choice of viewing today as having a growth mindset. I'm going to take everything and I'm going to grow from it, good, bad, ugly. I'm going to grow from it. Or I can go into the victim mindset. Woe is me. This has happened. Why is this always happening to me? And again, the reason that it matters is the law of attraction picks up on that emotion. Mm-hmm. It picks up on the growth mindset and says, okay, this is growing time, and we're going to grow, and we're going to gain from it, we're going to become successful. Or woe is me, I learned helplessness. I can't believe the world is doing this to me. I can't believe this is causing me problems. I can't believe. Well, yeah, it is now. Or you can just simply say, this is happening, moving on. That's for the ability to flip a switch. I used this analogy before in a few shows ago, but when you're watching Animal Planet or Discovery Channel, you're seeing a lion chasing a gazelle, and the gazelle's running all over the place, crazy, and it's life or death. Every move the gazelle makes is life or death move. Whether I live or die depends on my next move.
Right. And
nothing more stressful than that. The gazelle jumps over a rock, gets away from the lion. The gazelle looks around, lion's gone. The gazelle just starts eating. Okay, cool. No big deal. Well, they don't have any of the danger is immediately over. Let's get back to eat. We got to replenish our fuel. We got to get back to doing what we were doing. Mm-hmm. Humans, something happens. Oh no, this almost happened. This destroyed us. What are we, and we live in this repetitive motion of about what to happen. Humans are the only ones that have that. We told a story years ago, and I told a story that this one has been a long time. My son, Chris, many, many years ago, was volunteering at the local Humane Society. And this is a wonderful facility. They're a no-kill facility here. And they take these dogs in and who've been abused. And I love animals. And I love the fact that we have a place that treats them so fondly. So Chris was volunteering at the place. And there was a dog named Dazzle. And Dazzle had come in and his chain was wrapped around his left leg. And Chris was there. And Chris at the time was about 14. And for whatever reason, Dazzle would only allow Chris to comfort him and feed him and all this. So Chris showed up every day to feed Dazzle and pet Dazzle loved Chris. And even with a hurt leg, Dazzle would go chase the ball and do stuff, only for Chris stuff. So after about a week of him being there, the facility calls and they said, "Hey, will you tell Chris, ask him if he could come up tomorrow? Unfortunately, Dazzle is getting his leg removed today. Circulation didn't return, and we really hope Chris can come tomorrow because Dazzle's going to need him." And so I was like, "Oh wow!" So I told Chris, and Chris was very upset, and he said, I said, "Well, Chris, now when we get there," I said, "Dazzle's going to be very, he's lost his leg, he's going to be in pain." And so don't, he's probably not going to, just understand, he's probably not going to want to spend a lot of time or energy doing much. Well, we pull up, Dazzle sees Chris, has a bandage around, comes hopping out on 3 legs, running, jumping around, brings him the ball, runs out, chases the ball. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's not, Dazzle has a different perspective.
Totally.
And Chris said, well, Dad, I thought, yeah. I said, well, Chris, I was wrong. I said, Dazzle is no longer in pain. Dazzle could care less. He still gets around. He feels better. Dazzle isn't missing the leg that isn't there. He's happy the pain is gone, and he's got 3 good legs that work. Dazzle's perspective is better than a human's perspective. Dazzle never cared.
Yeah.
And I said, that's a great lesson. And that's a true story. And Dazzle was a lot better without that painful leg. He didn't miss the leg.
No.
It didn't matter.
Nope. Yeah. Perspective is everything. I have 2 more questions for you to address. These are my own that I'm raising. First one, you were mentioning forgiveness a moment ago, and you've often talked about the value of gratitude. I wondered if you could compare and contrast forgiveness and gratitude and what roles you think they play. And then the second thing I wanted you to address is, excuse me, after addressing that one, you're dealing with somebody else in your life who is eating out of a dumpster. I mean, I'm using that as a generic way of describing that they're going through really difficult stuff. And you want to help them, and you're not, you really can't help somebody else who isn't ready to be helped, but you want to help them. How do you help them?
Well, I'll start with the gratitude and the forgiveness.
Okay.
I think that what we're looking at, as a reminder, and I'll preface this by saying, what we're looking at, the reason any of this even matters is, again, what emotion we're putting out there, what vibration we're putting out there. So what will forgiveness bring about in the vibration? If you're forgiving or being forgiven, whichever one it is, doesn't really matter. What is your perspective and what is your goal in being forgiven or forgiving? To me, it's about adjusting your vibration. I always, when I made a comment to somebody one day and they were offended by that. And first of all, I had no intention of offense. And so the guy actually typed a Facebook quote, and he said, I'm actually offended by that statement. I go, well, thank you. And of course he's like, what? And I said, you've just given me the power to offend you. I said, wow. I said, I have more power today than I realized. Thank you. Well, of course, that really made him mad.
Of course.
And I said, no, you had to work to be offended. So I'm not going to, if you need me to say I'm sorry, I've done nothing to say I'm sorry about. So I'm not going to forgive or put myself in a vibration of needing. I've done nothing wrong. It's his, super paper thin skin that somehow it was such the most benign quote in the world. Somehow he took personal offense to it. So, with that. What are we doing? I don't want us to become a forgiveness machine where we're constantly asking for forgiveness for stuff we don't need to be forgiven about. If we're wrong, promptly admitting we're wrong, making amends in any way we can, repairing the damage that we've done, and then moving forward. That's awesome. So forgiveness is a state of mind done properly is a very effective uplifting vibration. But that's a very dangerous one too when you're living in the concept that you constantly need to be forgiven or you constantly need to be forgiving. If I need to forgive somebody 2 or 3 times, maybe I don't need to have that person in my life. I mean, it's, okay, I'll forgive you once and I might forgive you twice for that. Third time, it's now becoming my fault. And so I need to look at what vibration that's putting out there. Then when I look at the gratitude piece, gratitude, and I'm speaking for me because I know other people have different, but gratitude is my base emotion of the law of attraction. And I don't know if that comes from the fact that it was sort of the concept of The Secret, and she relayed that. I know other people that have sort of some different vibration and emotions that work, but keeping it really basic. Gratitude for me is where I am at the most harmonious. When I'm grateful for what I'm having, it's the most basic way to get more things. My law of attraction field responds best to what I'm grateful for. That's how I've used to work at best. When I'm grateful for the abundance I have more of an abundance. When I feel of a lack of what I have, or I'm not grateful for stuff, or I feel I've been slighted, then I get more things to feel slighted about. If I'm a victim of something, then I need more things to feel like I'm a victim about. So the two emotions are just seeking the vibration that you're trying to get back. Forgiveness can be a tool to raise your vibration, but you also have to be careful not to allow it to lower your vibration by forgiving for stuff that really doesn't need to be forgiven about. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it definitely makes sense. And the reason I mentioned those two concepts, forgiveness and gratitude, I think most people kind of figure they're kind of in the same ballpark. And I knew you were going to show that they're really quite different, which you did. But that's kind of an eye-opener, thinking that forgiveness and gratitude really are not the same at all.
No, and I've had people that have tried to apologize for well, I'm sorry I said that. First of all, please take that back because I was never offended or I was never harmed. So don't waste that on me. If that's not something, somehow if you're turning that, you need to adjust why you're asking to be forgiven on that. I have a super thick skin. I'm not worried. I don't live in a world where I allow other people's emotions or statements to drag me down. I'm good with whatever you need to be. I've become bulletproof or trying to become bulletproof in those areas, and I'm pretty good at it. So I always try to help people along the way. I've had people say, "Oh, I'm sorry, this happened." No, zero reason to be sorry. There's no, I'm not offended about that. And there was another part of your question.
Well, just the observation that gratitude is quite different. But there was also a second question. The second question was,
right.
You know somebody else in your life, somebody you work with, family member, a friend, a spouse, it could be almost anybody, who is struggling with some stuff, really, really struggling with some stuff.
Right.
And you want to be able to help them.
Yeah.
And yet you on the one hand, that really they're the only ones who can grow. On the other hand, that, you wish there was some way you could really, intervene for them. And it may even be somebody that you feel like you have an obligation to, like a spouse or a child or another family member or somebody you're really, really close to. How do you handle a situation where you kind of see that person spiraling and you're not really sure what to do about it?
That may be the hardest thing that as humans we have to do, whether it's our child or spouse or any just a friend. Watching people spiral out of control or make choices that are harmful or go through depressions. And one of the hard lessons, and Abraham Hicks sort of hits on this in several different ways along the time, but I can view that person in the way that I see them. I can put positive thoughts in how I'm viewing them. I can treat them with a positive vibration that I feel for them, but I cannot manifest for them. I can live an example of a life of somebody say, wow, what are you doing to get this? And then I can explain it. But if I were to go up to somebody if somebody would have come up to me when I'm eating out of a trash can and said, "Here's a book, The Secret. It'll change your life." I'd looked at them and go, "What the hell are you talking about?" This is not changing my life. I'm being out of a trash can and I'm sleeping on the street. That's
right.
not going to help anything.
Yep.
Now, it would have, but I wasn't in a place to be there to remotely. I can't force anyone to get to a place of where they need to be. And I say this in a joking manner, but I think we all sort of feel this way.
Yeah.
I could line up 20 people 10 people on each side of a table, and we all sit down and we explain to the person on the other side of the table what's wrong, and probably with complete accuracy, that person could tell me what I need to do to fix it. However, I would know the same answer. I might give them the same answer for their problem, and they're not going to implement it anymore. We have to arrive on our own. That's the hard part of the law of attraction, is allowing this to arrive for the individual who's doing the manifesting or what they're inviting. We have to allow them to get there, and that's a hard thing to do. You can't force it, and I've never figured out how to do it, nor would it be beneficial, because all kinds of people tried to help me along the way, and it wasn't until I became exceptionally ready for the message that I was able to receive it and then live it. And that's everybody I've ever dealt with in life. You've got to get there in a way that's acceptable to you.
Absolutely, yeah. It is the hardest thing to deal with, because we are attached to the people who are important to us in our lives, and when those people are going through something difficult, our hearts go out to them. So we want to help them. Sometimes we feel like we have an obligation to help them, but like you say, the hardest part is kind of letting go and just saying, they got to walk their own path. I can be there to help them pick up the pieces, but they still got to walk their own path.
We have I'm very much into nutrition and health and sort of a holistic view to life outside of the law of attraction. I think it actually all goes together, but that's a different day. One thing that I really want people to grasp, I had an example of a really good friend. I was in Florida. We were visiting. We met at a restaurant to eat. And in the South, people who are in the South, when I say South, I mean South, really down that way.
Deep South.
You go to a restaurant, you can order sweet tea. They add sugar to tea. And it's not just sweet, it's crazy sweet. It's very unhealthy. It makes Mountain Dew look like a health food. And so we sit down in this restaurant, and this gentleman, his issue is he was actually there to talk to me about how he's feeling down. He's very, very overweight, and so he sits down. The first thing he orders is a sweet tea. And I'm like, you might as well. There's a half a bag of sugar there. Why don't you
just mainline it?
I said, we can stop our discussion now. Stop sweet tea. If I didn't even know that was still a thing that you would drink. Of course, I mean you're 400 pounds. There's no way and he looked at me and goes, "Well, I've always drank sweet tea." Well, he said, "I want to know what I can do." I said, "Well, stop drinking sweet tea."
Yeah,
and he said, "Well, I'm depressed." I go, "Stop drinking sweet tea." Let's start with the most simple, And it was so obvious to me. Well, it took him 2 more years where he had to have, sort of a knee replacement operation, and he's in really poor health. And now he's going to have to. He had his knee operation a while back, and I'm thinking to myself, 2 years ago, you had a key that he just couldn't see. Yeah. And so I couldn't get him to see it. He wouldn't believe it. And it was so ridiculously obvious to me that there was no changes needed when you could simply start with he had 4 or 5 of these glasses he was 2,000 calories of sugar a day of sweet tea was being consumed. If we just stopped that, you would lose 100 pounds in a year.
Yeah.
And so it was baffling to me so I couldn't make him do that. But once he realized it, one of the first things he said is, I gave up sweet tea, and that helped a lot. I'm thinking, good. I told you that 2 years ago. But
well, isn't that it? You just nailed it right there. I mean, because we want to to say, I've been telling you this for years. You finally listened. But what really happened was they listened to themselves. And yes, what you said 2 years ago helped, but they listened to themselves. They listened to that message that was inside their bodies all that time. They finally paid attention to it, and you did help bring it to their attention.
Yeah. One of the frustrating things, I work with a lot of young people. When I say young people, say 15 to 25. I've worked with just tons of those. And so one of the frustrating things that almost every parent will tell me is once my clients start making progress, and they'll come home and they say, "Oh, you wouldn't believe what Joel said," and then mom will go like, "I've been telling you that for years." She's pissed that. Well, why are you listening to him? I've been telling you the same thing, and actually get mad of like what Well, first of all, I'm not his mom, and second, I have a technique of allowing them to come up with it so they believe it's their idea, and I reinforce it versus they're never going to do what you tell them. So the idea of being able to understand how that operates, it is very frustrating to say, God, I've been telling you this for a long time. Now you're doing it. At the end of the day, that person had to come to it themselves.
Yes.
Period. And that's the hard thing. When you're watching somebody struggle, you can't keep them from struggling. You can enable them and stop them from the lesson of struggle, and they'll continue to struggle, or you can have the courage to let them continue to struggle until the lesson they need to learn has been learned, and they can move on.
Yep, exactly right. And the only sad part here is that we're actually over time, so we have to kind of draw to a close. But before we go, tell people how to reach out to you if they're looking for a little private assistance.
My website is joelelston.com. I'm actually in the process of updating it. It looks pretty good. Got more work to do, or Joel Elston at Gmail are the best two ways to get hold of me.
All right, very good. Well, my friend, I appreciate this as always. I mean, I love talking to you every week, and I can't wait to talk to you again next week.
Thank you. I enjoyed so much. Thanks to our audience for listening.
Absolutely. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.